All right, everyone, welcome back. Final session here at HR Exchange Live Employee Engagement and Experience. This session is called Delivering World-Class Employee Experience Leadership. Before we get started, just a quick reminder, as always, put your technical questions in the Q&A box. I will help you sort those out as best as I can. Put your questions for our speaker in the same box, and we will get to those when we do the Q&A at the end of the session or the presentation. So with all that said, employee experience is obviously something that is on our minds, and leading those efforts can be a challenge. So to take us through a discussion about this, we're joined by Ben Whitter. He is the founder and CEO of the HEX organization and the two-time author of a book called Employee Experience and another one called Human Experience at Work. Ben, welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you from the UK. This is not a slide-heavy session. It's going to be more of a discussion, and if you have any questions as we go through, please pop them in the chat, and we can explore those after the session or a little bit later in the session as well. You know, it's funny. I've been researching and working in employee experience for a long time now, 15 plus years, which has taken me all around the world, working in places like China and France and Germany and Australia. And I've never seen such a profound change as we've seen in the last year or so. It seems like the focus on the human experience at work has accelerated beyond any measure that we could have predicted. And I think we're all still grappling with it, really. In organizations, people are leading with the best foot and seeing how things land. But a lot of experimentation going on right now. But I suppose when you start to think about the human experience at work, as I've done for the last year before the pandemic even started, I was starting to research for my second book. And it takes you to some quite interesting places. I use the British word interesting because it means, some challenging places. When you start to consider what the human experience actually is, do any of us know? Do any of us have that definitive answer in terms of what the human experience is? I was sat here yesterday with one of my neighbors. She's a quite elderly lady. And I saw she was out there in the blue sky and the sunshine reading a book. So I thought, okay, I'll have a sit down with her, have a little bit of a chat, as you do. Because in England, we have to make most of the sunshine and the blue sky. And as I started to talk to her, I realized that her husband has just gone into hospital. He's in his 80s now, and she's in her early 80s as well. And, we started a conversation. And I said, but I offered my sympathy and support around her husband. But then I said, how are things generally? And she looked at me with a kind of rueful smile on her face. And she said, well, we're all just waiting for death, aren't we? I was like, okay, what do I do with that information? She was clearly in the headspace, which was, she's in her early 80s. She's thinking about the end of life experience. And I was like, okay, how do I respond with that? Now, the Englishman in me immediately, and I don't know if this is pre-programmed into us, but the Englishman in me started to look for humor, because I think, that's how we cope with negative circumstances and adversity sometimes. But I couldn't find anything. It was such a shock to hear that direct bluntness around the human experience. The best I could come up with, this is a few second thinking time in my mind. I was like, well, maybe you need to act more like a dog. And it kind of broke a negative thinking pattern. And she looked at me and she said, why would I want to do that? And I said, well, think about it. If you ask a dog to talk and they were able to speak and you asked it the time, what would it say? It would say, now. What is the time? Now. What is the time? It's right now. And it'd be wagging its tail and be very happy about that. There's something about the human experience that kind of positions us in this place where we need to focus on the future and focus on the past. And with that, we bring these memories and maybe these thinking patterns that sometimes hinder our progress and our mindset in the current situation. But it it served its goal because she was laughing after that, and then we got into a conversation about the book that she was reading. But I thought, what an interesting moment for me yesterday, and what an interesting experience she's having in terms of this really deep thinking she's going through as she contemplates where she is in life, maybe some of the regrets she's had, and maybe the unfulfilled potential that she's starting to question now and look back on. She did say something else about making the most of experiences and making the most of life, which I find was quite profound in just a very general conversation. But this is, it starts to get at the essence of what great world-class employee experience leadership looks like in terms of starting to understand people where they are, starting to understand their deep desires as human beings and their deep needs to fulfill their potential in life, and making sure that everyone who comes through our organizations has no regrets. Think about it. The amount of regrets that people have at the end of their life are a nice summary of maybe the life that they could have lived if they took that risk or took that chance or had the support that they could have benefited from within their organizations and careers. So as you go down this path with human experiences, I've done, you do start to go into these deeper dialogue and discussions with people at organizations and companies around the world. So I want to dig into some of that today to look at this profound experience we've had over the last year, what it means to the future of work and HR, but also what is world-class employee experience leadership? What does it look like after being in the field for several years now and looking at organizations that are more mature, maybe people who are more delivering better returns and impact with employee experience than others. And I just want to dissect very, very quickly over a short presentation what that looks like and how you can take that away and focus on that in your organizations. And it kind of starts with some of my work around employee experience, but it starts to transition into the human experience, because what I found looking at employee experience is, it's not a revelation to tell you, and you'll know this from where you are, is the employee experience is all about human beings. That's essentially it. It's, you can't look at employee experience without thinking about human beings in a completely new way. The way that we work with them as HR practitioners and HR leaders, and the way that we develop solutions, ideas and plans and strategies working in partnership with our workforce, rather than saying, them over here at the corporate level doing their thing and employees and the workers and the partners doing their thing over here. We've seen a convergence which has been accelerated by the pandemic across the world now. So it's fascinating to understand how employee experience is going much more deeply into the human experience. Not just about people's time in 9-to-5 work, but also how that time and that connection to their company affects their personal lives. The support they need and the experiences they have, the opportunities they have to connect with their families. We're looking at the commuter experience now. We're looking at the home worker and the remote worker experience. We're looking at frontline essential workers in a way that they really haven't been considered before, potentially. Not just focused on safety and security, but also on the type and quality of experience that they're having in work. So for people like me and hopefully people like you, it's an exciting time, a challenging time, but an exciting time to reconsider what the employee experience actually is. So from a period of significant research for me, certainly working with global organizations, we had plenty of American organizations involved in that research, to medium-sized businesses, to small startup, high-growth companies. We looked at figuring out what employee experience is and how we can apply it in a very powerful way within our companies. And this is what we found. We found that the employee experience really was a holistic construct. It's a way of looking at the workforce as a holistic entity within this larger organization. And the way that people connect with each other, the relationships they build, the level of trust you have in the business, and the quality of the relationships to deliver powerful business outcomes. Essentially, as engagement is a title of this conference, engagement is an outcome of experience. This is the defining characteristic of employee experience professionals. They view engagement as an outcome of experiences. It could be experiences and interactions across that employee journey, but they all add up to a deeper level of engagement across the workforce. And conversely, stronger business outcomes. From all the cases I've considered, companies like Starbucks, companies with global workforces or domestic workforces, the ones that are really focused on the employee experience are proving in the research outcomes to be more profitable, more productive, developing a stronger, satisfied customer base, and also more innovative, which is interesting. So focusing on growth through innovation is a great part of the employee experience. But we did find that it's a holistic construct, and to sum it up quite nicely for you, I put it together in the holistic employee experience, or the HEX as we call it. Now, as you look at that, you'll find one of the more interesting words around today, which is this search for truth. We're struggling to find it in some level, at societal level these days. Who can you trust? What institutions can we really place our faith in and trust in these days? It's getting very complicated. Transparency certainly is on the increase for the more progressive organizations, but there's a lot to be desired, I suppose, in this more truthful economy. What's being delivered and what's being promised are sometimes two very different things. So at the center of the HEX is truth, and that's the combination of an organization's purpose, mission, and values. Just as ourselves as individuals consider, what's our purpose in life? What are our values that are going to help guide and cultivate our growth and success in our life journey? But also, what's that mission that we're on that unifies all of these things and brings it together so that we can deliver our best human performance? It's funny how many people are not really connected to their truth. They spend a lifetime trying to figure out, what it is they're here to do, and many of them don't actually get there. It's the same for organizations. They may promise certain things to their customers. They may promise a certain, set of values, a certain mission, and they may be guided by this very significant and well-marketed purpose. But how often do you see that come onto the inside through the employee experience? Sometimes it just doesn't happen. So it's nothing more than fancy marketing and a little bit of lie-telling, really. There's a few fibs going on within the corporate world, that's for sure. So the employee experience gives us this nice way to frame and install the truth within our business. So across all of the employee experience, we can start to look at the connection that people have to their truth as individuals, but also to the organizational truth that our brand is standing for. And that's so powerful. We looked at Harvard Business Review research that looked at millions of pieces of data, and they found that organizations focus just on purpose. They focus on this sole thing that's purpose, your reason for existence, and telling that story and communicating that story. Organizations were more profitable and more successful and delivered better financial returns. They also delivered stronger sense of meaning and belonging to the workforce as well. So it's insightful, but if you combine purpose with values and mission, well, you can imagine the impact you're going to have if you install this within the employee experience. It's going to be really powerful. So what does the HEX comprise and what's it made out of? Oh, I pressed the wrong button there. There we go. Well, first of all, the big thing, it's human. This is a very human-centered approach to business. And as I say, the more you go deeper with the humanity within the organization, the more sophisticated your employee experience approach will be in terms of serving people's needs. So it's very human. It's not coming from this place of, it's a technology place. It's a communication place. It's a software place. It's none of that, really. It's a human place that we're starting employee experience from. And that's reflected in some of the decisions we make as well, which is good. We're looking at the leadership element, which has potentially the biggest impact on employee experience impact. Again, world-class organizations now, they're starting to look at human-centered leadership as a way to develop their performance across all the interactions and moments that matter across the organization. which is fantastic. I asked you a question there, which is, think about your best employee experience that you've ever had. A lot of that will be defined not by all the fancy things you have, the quality of your chair or the quality of your desk, the quality of your microphone. I think a lot of that is defined by the quality of the manager that you report into. You never forget a bad leader, but also you're never any less grateful for a very positive leader who mentors you and coaches you through your career. So leadership is prime time for employee experience, and we're seeing that strongly reflected in where people make investment decisions across the HEX market as well. The other thing that world-class employee experience leadership looks like is colleagues becoming almost structural engineers. They're looking at the best opportunities they have to connect and align the employee experience within their business. So if any function or department is getting in the way of that, well, they're not going to last very long, because decisive action will be taken because it's not good enough. How much friction is caused by organizations just setting themselves up in a way that creates tension, conflict, and competing priorities. Maybe that's true for your organization. You have a HR team that doesn't talk to the IT team. You have the IT team that never engages with the marketing team. So all of that great stuff within the employee experience, it never meets the outside world. And potentially some of these great things are never delivered in the first place because of different agendas within the business. So the structure is a big part of what it is to be, I suppose, an employee experience leader in 2021. Certainly as you consider the hybrid workforce and some of the examples you've maybe looked at today. Again, technology, making sure it's in balance with humanity is always going to be critical within the employee experience. So again, that's high on the agenda here. How many pain points can we solve through technology? But also, what are we doing with that technology in the first place? Is there any technology that isn't serving our business well? Can we remove it or redefine it to do something that has a more positive impact? The amount of organizations out there that are making technology decisions that potentially not serving them in the best possible way is quite alarming sometimes. And coming from a place of, does this technology connect our truth to employees in a very powerful way, is a nice way to look at things, as opposed to, okay, it's a nice new gadget or gizmo, but what value does that actually add in practice? So again, we're more demanding, I suppose, of our technology vendors and partners as a result of this within our employee experience ecosystem, which I've got to say, as a 15-year internal HR practitioner, that's very good news. I've seen so much money wasted on the inside of businesses because they've taken decisions in isolation and they haven't really considered any meaningful co-creation with their workforce. So again, that's good. It's changing. Let's get on with it. The workplace, again, this finding from the first book is more relevant than ever, because what we found during this period of research was that the workplace was never actually a building anyway. It's the spaces and places that we can deliver and that enable our best performance. So in that sense, COVID-19 has only accelerated this new kind of view of the workplace. It's where we get our best work done. That's what matters. And, we're seeing a large take-up of hybrid organizations to give people the flexibility, autonomy, and control they need to get their jobs done in a great way. There is some tension around this. Some are still looking at physical workplaces and physical estates. Others are being very decisive and saying, some days in the workplace, some days not in the workplace. But my question and challenge would be around, what enables you to connect people to your truth in that powerful way? So the values that you espouse, that mission that you're on, and that purpose that is underpinning everything, what is the best way to enable that through the workplace? And it could be home working a lot of the time, and it could be a combination of home and high impact connection opportunities within the workplace, a physical workplace. So again, exciting experimentation going on there, and there's no definitive conclusion as to which is going to win. But I suppose the one that enables that truth to come to life in a way that is authentic, I suppose that's where I would place my money. And then the final thing I wanted to talk about is community. So again, we've seen the power of community within our organizations, companies pulling together, making things happen, being very compassionate with the workforces, creating environments that we can talk about mental health. We can talk about some of the challenging aspects of the pandemic, some of the challenging parts of the organization to navigate in this remote way. We haven't got the right equipment. We haven't got the right tools. How can we solve those challenges in and as a partnership as opposed to anything else has been really quite interesting. But also the impact of employee experience on our communities is really quite powerful these days. Connecting employee experience to societal and sustainability and social justice causes is the next frontier of employee experience if organizations are not already there with that. So again, interesting space to look at in terms of the community aspect of employee experience. How are we connecting people to something that serves society and the planet in a whole new way, in a positive way? I think will be a defining aspect of employee experience into the deeper future. So those are a few things I just wanted to flag up in terms of our work and where some of our practitioners are focused. Again, we work with global organizations through a lot of our consulting work and programs. And they're having a lot of fun actually installing the HEX into their businesses and making sure that people and relationships are as strong as they possibly can be, as opposed to having something that more looks like a stressed organization. Because there's a lot of stress out there. It's a challenging time, but for employee experience leaders, it's also probably the most fulfilling times in their careers. So I just wanted to share a few insights as well from our HEX Practitioner program, which is a global and virtual program where we work with and coach employee experience leaders. And I just wanted to give you a few of the headlines that come out from that research that really define or are starting to define this new and differentiated professional within support functions and within HR functions in particular. And it's wonderful to see some of these things coming through. And the first thing is that truth seeking. So that ability to connect what you're working on to this wider organizational truth. Whether it's a HR policy, HR practice, or a management practice, how do you connect it to serve your brand in that powerful way? Connect it to something bigger than the HR function. And this is what we're starting to see as people start to install that truth into their business. We're also seeing a deeper level of co-creation that we haven't seen ever. It's on a level certainly I've never seen before. That we are going much deeper into the workforce to co-create solutions with our workforce, with our partners, to avoid negative impacts like employee activism because employees haven't been consulted, employees haven't been part of any change, or there's been a lack of communication. Even the best workplaces are falling foul of employees in terms of this level of co-creation and some organizational conflict. So it's great to see a higher level of co-creation taking place now across all aspects of the organization and all support functions, not just HR, not just on business strategy, but on various things within the employee experience and the employee journey. We're also seeing a great emergence of some holistic thinkers, thinking about the holistic nature of life and how profound it is and how we can support people, but also the organization. It is a holistic system of interacting elements that is complicated, sometimes more complicated than is necessary often, but it is a system nonetheless that we need to look across and look beyond our specialisms or our support functions. So again, another powerful thing that's coming through, certainly from our research around the capabilities. The other thing about employee experience leaders is that they are adaptable pragmatists. They are adapting to the circumstances within their control, and they are pragmatic around working with stakeholders in a way that they can get wins on the board and the way that they can deliver progress in whatever way that looks like. So they are pragmatic in a way that, they're not rigid in terms of if something's dead in the water and it is not going to happen, they will influence and adapt things to suit the conditions and the context that they're operating in, which I think is very much welcome. Also, they have that ability to think critically about some of the decisions that they're making, and think really critically about their organization. Not just promote where they're really strong, but also focus on fixing the things that are not quite right within the workforce and across that employee journey, which is excellent. It's all well and good starting your employee experience journey by doing some employee journey mapping and looking at ways to wow the workforce and create happy people. But I find still the most powerful place to start is fixing the things that are creating problems for people within the organization. Because I think if you start there and you eliminate some pain, it's a nicer and smoother path to creating some trust and a stronger relationship with employees. So fixing things that are actually a problem rather than introducing things that are designed to wow people is actually a more powerful way to look at employee experience and starting those journeys. And actually it's a great way to form a relationship with people, to say, look, we know things are getting wrong. We know things are not quite as they should be. Let's fix them together. There's no more powerful message than that. And this delivers a high level of experimentation and a tolerance at senior level, C-suite level, for experimentation. You're not always going to win with some of the products and services you launch from HR or some of the newer things that you're doing there. But the willingness and tolerance of experimentation is high on the agenda within some of the more mature X organizations. Again, there is a high level of principled practitioner or principled approaches. So again, it's this no nonsense, straightforward approach in that these are our values, and we're not willing to compromise them for a quick win or a quick outcome. Those values are there, and we're going to uphold them across our work and across the HR function. And if any policies are getting in the way of that, then they will be challenged. That's for sure. So again, great to see that coming through the employee experience leadership side of things. And the other aspect is all of this is creating a deeper level of empathy across the organization for people and their experiences, and enabling this organizational empathy to take place. Thinking more about organizations and the people within them. What kind of experiences are people having now, and how can we better support people during difficult life moments and challenging times, certainly through the pandemic. But also, how can we elevate them at moments of great opportunity within their own careers and their own aspirations as well. Yeah, this is noticeable within the people, certainly I coach and work with, and people around my team. It's a very can-do approach. They're not really focused on this, we can't do this, and we don't have budget for this. They get on and do things with the circumstances and the conditions and the context that they do have, which I find is refreshing. Certainly in HR circles, I've worked with some HR teams that hasn't been the case. And they're always looking maybe for reasons and excuses not to do things. Whereas employee experience leaders, they tend to be looking for a way to say yes to things that are going to have a positive impact. And, they will challenge the status quo when necessary to get that done, which again is great. And this is because they're deep listeners. They are listening to the workforce in ways, using technology to do that at scale. They're using, AI in some places to get that job done. But they are making sure that voices are heard and action is taken as a result of that listening. Through forums, one-to-one interviews, through all manner of different quantitative data analysis, anything you can think of. They're looking at the data, but also they're taking action based on the data, not on a wish list or a corporate kind of agenda. They're saying, okay, this is what employees are telling us, and they're taking that absolutely seriously in the way that they design the experiences within the company. And certainly through the pandemic, there is a differentiated leader that's emerged, and they are more compassionate than you can imagine. They are compassionate around people's real life experiences, and they're making accommodations within the management approach, within the strategic and operational approach, and they're demonstrating that through the communication. So again, a big priority and a big outcome of the research that we see with HEX leaders we work with. And then finally, I mean, this is a great bit, which is all of that combined gives you a level of confidence where you can be a bit more rebellious. You know, you can be a bit more of a renegade to change things within your organization that just, you know, some of these things that organizations do, let's face it, are just dumb. They're a little bit silly. So then they're not afraid to go in there and say, you know, why are we doing this? You know, this process over here just doesn't make any sense, and it's causing, you know, distress. It's causing mental health issues. It's causing anxiety. Let's just stop doing it and do something more adult, more grown up that actually makes a difference to the workforce and to people within our workforce. So again, another great thing and another great trait we're seeing from employee experience leaders is that they are natural renegades, and they do want to disrupt the status quo when and where they can to deliver better business and human outcomes. That's essentially it. So yeah, so those were just a few headlines from me. I wanted to share something from our research. If you are interested in joining us, we have our next HEX Practitioner program that begins on May 3rd, which is virtual and involves peer coaching and group coaching with employee experience leaders. And this is where this has come from. So it's a live kind of research study on what's working within employee experience and what's helping companies become, you know, a very successful enterprise indeed. So I will leave you with that. And my final thing is just to say, enjoy the experience. You know, as I mentioned, the lady at the forefront of this talk has inspired me to really enjoy the experiences I have working with people, working on things that I enjoy to do. And I kind of take that advice forward and give that to you in terms of what you're doing as well. And if you're not enjoying it, we need to find ways to redesign our experience to make it so. But thank you very much. Enjoy the experience.
Awesome, Ben. Very good chat. Thank you for joining us today. This is the last session, so we have one question that I'd like to ask you, since we have a couple minutes here. But I know we are going over a little bit, but I'll just ask this. You know, it says obviously honesty and empathy are essential in balancing engaging employees and supporting well-being with performance requirements and needs. Do you have any specific strategies with respect to structures and communication that help do this as well? Yeah,
I mean, there's quite a few out there in terms of building trust and transparency across the organization. And in the new book, there's what's going to be a really quite radical model that I present based on the current round of research, which is an approach that brings to the fore, or the central operating level, this human experience team. So if you really focus on the human experience, then you'll start to develop a structure at the center of the organization, which is designed solely to architect, design, and roll out experiences that make a difference, that land an impact. That's it. So any structure that's getting in the way of that will need to be challenged. This is why we're seeing organizations in the book and you know, official case studies. They're starting to transition into something more like employee experience or human experience as a central operating model. That could be a cultural operating model. It could be a human experience team. It could be an employee experience team. Whatever they call it, you know, we have case studies in the book from companies like Ford, who have 200,000 employees. We have companies and case studies in the book from IKEA and leading brands in China and in Europe. So they're all starting to say, okay, how can we challenge ourselves to be more human-centered? And that is changing the way that they structure in HR, IT, all the other support functions as well. One team, a specific strategy they used, they are, you know, a massively human-centered business, but the support functions weren't really reflecting that. So they changed their entire support function model into a working life team. So now all they focus on is creating the best possible working life for all of their team members and community in order for them to drive performance at business, brand, and human levels. And I asked the CEO just the other day, experience of delivering that strategy in that specific team, would you go back to what you had in terms of HR and this and that and this? You should never in a million years. So I think the proof is definitely in the pudding with these new models, definitely.
All right, excellent. That was fantastic, Ben. I want to thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you very much for having me. And if you do have any questions, anyone off the call, feel free to come to our website and ask away, and we'll get back to you.
All right. Well, everyone, I want to thank you for joining us at this. This is our first edition of HR Exchange Live Employee Engagement Experience, and I think it's been a success. I look forward to doing more in the future, certainly around these topics. Please do keep an eye on the HR Exchange Network. As always, we're always doing things with our podcast, with our YouTube channel, with our live events. We've got more coming. Our HR Tech event is coming up in June. We're looking forward to that. So we hope to see you at future HR events, and keep an eye on the website for more content designed to keep HR professionals at the forefront of change. And until next time, stay safe.